Evan Carter parked the car by the side of the road and for a moment lingered his gaze on the house that was now his. Two-story, bright, with a wide veranda and a well-kept lawn. It looked as if it had come off an advertising brochure in which they promised a dream home. But for Evan, this was not just a house, it was a symbol of freedom, a symbol of a new life. He turned off the engine but was in no hurry to get out. His heart beat dully in his chest, a strange feeling, a mixture of delight and anxiety. He was used to the noise of the city, to the apartment with thin walls behind which the neighbors quarreled, to the roar of cars outside the window. Here it was quiet, almost eerily quiet. Silence. That's what he had craved for the past few years. After a grueling divorce, a protracted legal process, and months in limbo, he could finally say he had emerged victorious. Now he had his own place, a space where no one dictated to him how to live, where no one pointed out what was right and what was not. Here he was on his own. Evan took a deep breath, exhaled, and finally opened the car door. At that same moment, the sunlight hit his eyes and a soft summer breeze swept across the lawn, caressing the leaves of the trees. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and something else, a light smoke from the neighboring yards, perhaps from a barbecue. He walked to the trunk, opened it, and took out one of the boxes with things. At that moment, he heard footsteps. "Hi, neighbor." Evan looked up and saw a man approaching him with a broad smile. Tall, stocky, with short cropped hair and confidence in every movement. Behind him, a few steps away, was a woman, slender, well-groomed, with a perfect hairstyle and expensive manicure. "Welcome to the neighborhood," the man continued and extended his hand to Evan. "Cody Morgan, and this is my wife Ashley." "Evan," he replied briefly, shaking hands. Cody's handshake was firm, almost crushing. He held it a little longer than he should have, as if trying to demonstrate something. Evan didn't like it, but he said nothing. "You've chosen a great place," Cody said, looking at the house, "and your pool is just gorgeous. The kids are already going crazy when they see it from the window." "Thank you," Evan nodded politely. "You know, we have a tradition here of having friendly parties, mutual aid, so to speak. Neighbors are like family." Evan silently looked at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was some subtext in Cody's words. Maybe it was just his bias, or maybe a premonition of something unclear. "If you need anything," Ashley intervened, smiling, "don't hesitate to ask. And of course, we expect you at our barbecue next weekend. All the neighbors come." "I appreciate the invitation," Evan replied. He knew he wouldn't go. When the Morgans left, he lingered, watching them return to their house. Cody was excitedly telling his wife something, gesticulating, and she was nodding approvingly. Evan tightened his fingers on the handle of the box. His intuition told him, these people were not as simple as they seemed. The first time it happened on a Saturday afternoon. Evan returned from a run, enjoying the warmth of the sun on his skin, when he heard noise from his backyard. He froze, having barely crossed the threshold, listening. Laughter, splashing water, someone's excited voice. His heart beat faster. He moved toward the backyard, inwardly hoping he was wrong, but as he stepped onto the patio, he froze. Teenagers were splashing in the pool, 5 or 6 maybe. Among them were Cody Morgan's 2 sons. He recognized them from Cody's descriptions. Their hands cut through the water, their faces shone with carefree smiles. "What the hell?" Evan muttered. He stepped forward, loudly clearing his throat. The teenagers froze. One of them, a boy with curly hair, shrugged. "Hey, neighbor, we just decided to cool off. It's hot out. You're in my pool." Evan's voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "You didn't even ask for permission. We thought you wouldn't mind," said the second, a brunette, obviously the brother of the first. "Dad said it's always empty here." Evan took a deep breath, holding back a surge of irritation. "I mind. Gather your things and leave." Some of the teenagers began to climb out of the water. Others exchanged glances, as if deciding whether to resist. At that moment, the gate creaked and Cody appeared on the porch, holding a beer can in his hand. "Hey, buddy." His voice was friendly, but there was a note of superiority in it. "They're just kids. What's the big deal?" The big deal is that this is my territory, Cody. You should have asked first. Cody snorted, looking at the wet teenagers. Relax, Evan. We're all neighbors here. We share with each other. Don't be that guy who ruins the fun. Evan felt anger boiling inside him, but he didn't let it out. Not yet. This was the last time, he said quietly but firmly. If I see anyone in my pool without permission again, we'll deal with it differently. Cody squinted, studying him, then shrugged. Whatever you say, buddy. Evan stood and watched as the teenagers left, dripping water on his patio. He knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The next morning, Evan woke up with a heavy feeling. He was used to solving problems quickly, but this conflict still hung in the air. He decided to check the pool and, going out into the yard, found a mess there. Wet towels, empty plastic cups, and several pieces of food forgotten on the loungers. This was a challenge. He knew he had to act. Today he would install a surveillance camera. After installing the camera, Evan felt a strange relief but also anxiety. Now he had evidence. He checked the recording every few hours, and to his surprise, no one appeared during the day. This was suspicious. Late in the evening, when Evan was already getting ready to go to bed, his phone vibrated, a notification from the camera. He opened the app and saw someone moving by the fence. It was one of the teenagers, Cody's son. He carefully made his way to the pool, looking around, and then quickly threw something into the water and ran away. Evan jumped up, turned on the back light, and rushed into the yard. The water in the pool now had a strange tint, and something resembling trash was floating on the surface. His jaws clenched. This was not just an act of mischief. It was a challenge, direct and demonstrative. In the morning, Evan went to the Morgan's house. He knocked, and after a few seconds, Cody opened the door, as usual with a friendly smile. Evan, buddy, how's it going? We need to talk, Evan said, his voice calm but firm. Cody raised his eyebrows but didn't lose his self-assurance. Of course, come in. Evan went inside. He was no longer going to play by someone else's rules. This conflict was just beginning. Evan not only installed a camera, but also bought a system with a motion sensor that sent notifications to his phone. Now he knew every movement in his yard. That evening, he received another notification. When he opened the recording, his face paled. On the screen was a group of teenagers, the same ones who had been in the pool earlier. They were back. Evan didn't hesitate. He went out into the yard, turned on the flashlight, and loudly said, I've recorded everything. Leave immediately. The teenagers froze. One of them nervously tugged at his friend's sleeve, but the main instigator, Cody's son, stepped forward. Relax, old man. This is not up for discussion, Evan interrupted, clenching his fists. Next time I'll call the police. It seemed the words had an effect. The teenagers reluctantly left through the gate, exchanging worried glances. But Evan knew this wasn't the end. He felt that Cody would soon appear with a new, friendly conversation, and he was ready for it. The morning began with a persistent knock at the door. Evan opened it and saw Cody standing in front of him with his arms crossed and a tense smile. We need to talk, Evan, he said, slightly tilting his head. About what? Evan replied coldly, not moving from the doorway. Cody smirked, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. You're acting like this neighborhood belongs only to you. You're putting on a show with cameras, scaring the kids. That's not neighborly. Neighborly is respecting someone else's territory, Cody, Evan replied sharply. I'm not against friendship, but I'm against invasion. Cody sighed heavily. Fine, if that's how it is, let's settle this differently. We all live here together. Let's agree. On weekends, let the kids swim in your pool for a couple of hours, and you'll forget about this whole thing. Evan slowly nodded, realizing the full audacity of the proposal. He met Cody's gaze. No, he said clearly. If I see anyone here without permission again, I'll call the police. Cody clenched his jaws but said nothing. He turned around and left. Evan closed the door. He knew this wasn't the end. The next morning, Evan woke up with a surprising sense of calm. He understood that his confrontation with Cody had reached a critical point, but inside him was a strange feeling of confidence. He had done everything he could to set boundaries. The rest was up to the Morgans. A few days passed. The neighbors behaved cautiously. Cody didn't come anymore. Ashley didn't try to talk to Evan, and the Morgan kids didn't appear by his pool. Finally, the desired peace reigned in the yard. One evening, as he was going out to take out the trash, Evan noticed that Cody was standing by his house, leaning against the railing. He looked at Evan and nodded but didn't smile. It was a gesture of recognition, perhaps even respect. Evan nodded back. At that moment, he realized he had won, not with a loud victory, but with a quiet assertion of his boundaries. Now this was his home, his territory, his rules. Climbing onto the porch, he looked at the pool. The water shimmered in the moonlight. He knew that over time he would forget this tension, forget the anxious nights, but he would never forget the lesson he learned. Sometimes, to stand up for your right to peace, you have to be ready to fight. Evan smiled and closed the door behind him, leaving not only the conflict but also the confidence that now he was truly home.